So I want to start by thanking Pouyan, Dr. Pouyan Rezvani, to have kindly accepted to give his talk on Arabic translations of the Almagest. This is wonderful to have you with us. I would just very quickly present you to those who haven't met you before. Pouyan Rezvani is a postdoctoral researcher in Munich at the Bavarian Academy of Sciences, working as a member of the fantastic, great project Ptolemies Arabus et Latinus, PAL, as we say. And within this project, he has a special focus that is precisely one of the translations of the Almagest into Arabic. In earlier years, he's worked in the Netherlands and wrote a wonderful book that I have here. I can really recommend it. Book on the two treatises on the astrolabe by Biruni. And I think Pouyan was really the right person to do this work. Reading from the intro, it looks like it has been quite hard to work with difficult manuscripts. And I think in one case, there's only a unique manuscript, and we all know that this is particularly tricky to work on a text when you have just one manuscript. And so without further ado, I would like to give you the floor. Pouyan, please.
Thank you very much, Samuel, for your very kind introduction, and thank you and your colleagues who organized this session and gave me this opportunity to give a talk on the medieval Arabic translations of Ptolemy's Almagest. This is my great pleasure to give this talk in this occasion. And so, as you see in the title, I would like to discuss some characteristics of the medieval Arabic translations of the Almagest. And I also would like to just mention that in the background of the title page, you see one of the pages of the manuscript, which is preserved in Tunisia in the National Library of Tunisia with the number 7116. And this is the only manuscript which contains the entire text and tables of one of the medieval Arabic translations of the Almagest, which was made by Ishaq ibn Hunayn and Thabit ibn Qurra. So, in this talk, I would start with some explanations about the content and the structure of Ptolemy's Almagest that might be useful for those who do not know the details of the content and the structure of the book. And then I will move on with the medieval Arabic translations of the Almagest, both the lost translations and the translations that still exist. And then I will mention the major medieval Arabic works on the Almagest. As you probably know, Claudius Ptolemaeus, who was living in the 2nd century AD, was working in Alexandria, which was the principal city of the Greco-Roman Egypt. And he wrote the Almagest most likely after 150 AD, which is his earliest extant work, and is an exposition of planetary theory in 13 books, describing the motions of the planets by means of geometrical models, and played an influential role in the development of the geocentric astronomy. And in 1898, Heiberg provided a critical edition of the Greek text of the Almagest, and you can see the cover page of Heiberg's edition on the left side of the slide. And later on, Toomer in 1984 published an English translation of the Greek text, as you see its cover page on the right side of the slide. But none of the medieval Arabic translations of the Almagest has been published yet. So this is actually my job in this project, to make a critical edition of one of these medieval Arabic translations. So as I said, I would like to give you an overview of the content of the Almagest, which, as I already mentioned, consists of 13 books. In the first book, Ptolemy gives a brief treatment of the nature of the universe and trigonometrical theory. In the second book, he discusses some spherical astronomy related to the observer's position on the Earth. Then in book 3, he gives some explanation, comprehensive actually explanation about the theory of the sun, and then he moves on with the theory of the moon in the fourth book, and then lunar and solar parallax, and then lunar and solar eclipses. And then books 7 and 8 contain the star catalog, which contains the names and longitude and latitude of the stars and their magnitudes, with some small descriptions for each one of the stars. And then in books 9 to 11, Ptolemy discusses the theory of planetary longitudinal motion, and then he moves on with the retrogradation and greatest elongation, and then the Almagest ends with the planetary latitude in book 13. So as I mentioned, actually Ptolemy used geometrical models in order to explain the motions of the celestial bodies, and his book is in the direct connection with the spherical astronomy, and we can classify the problems of spherical astronomy in the Almagest in 4 general categories. The first one is the transformation of coordinates. The second one is the astronomical geography, and then the third one, rising and setting of the stars, and the fourth one, the instantaneous position of the ecliptic. So if you would like to read some more details about this classification, you can check the book by Pedersen, who published in 2011. And here I would like to just briefly mention the commentaries that were written on the Almagest in late antiquity. The earliest commentary that was written on the Almagest was by Pappus in the 3rd and 4th century. And then Theon of Alexandria in the 4th and 5th century wrote 2 commentaries, a small commentary and a large commentary, that according to the bibliographer, the medieval Islamic bibliographer Ibn Nadim, who wrote his Kitab al-Fihrist or the catalog, including a lot of bibliographical information. At least one of the two commentaries by Theon of Alexandria was translated into Arabic and was available to the medieval Islamic scholars. He doesn't mention which one was translated, but he mentions that Theon's commentary on the Almagest is available in Arabic. And then the last one, the last commentary or work that was written on the Almagest in late antiquity was by Proclus, which was an introduction to the Almagest in the 5th century. And then, as you know, in the 8th to the 10th century, a wide range of translation activities were carried on in Baghdad, mainly under the Abbasid dynasty, through which a lot of secular Greek books on scientific and philosophical subjects were translated into Syriac and Arabic, including books on astrology, alchemy, mathematics, astronomy, the theory of music, and some other subjects related to science and philosophy. And of course, one of the main topics of these books was astronomy, and among the astronomical books that were translated from Greek into Arabic in that period of time through these translation activities that is also labeled by some scholars, including Gutas, as translation movement, of course, was Ptolemy's Almagest, which had an outstanding place in the astronomical books at that time. So generally, there were 4 groups of translators involved in this so-called translation movement. The first generation of translators were before the reign of the 7th Abbasid Caliph Al-Ma'mun, who started to translate these scientific and philosophical books from Greek into Syriac and Arabic. And then the second generation was the circle of the philosopher Al-Kendi, who supervised some translators, mainly regarding the philosophical books. The third group of translators were working under the supervision of Hunayn ibn Ishaq, who was a leading figure in the translation movement, and he had his own translation methods and school. And one of the members of Hunayn's translation circle was his son, Ishaq ibn Hunayn, who was also, like his father, a translator and a physician, and was very much interested in philosophical texts, but he also translated Ptolemy's Almagest and Euclid's Elements. And then the latest generation of translators worked after Hunayn. So here you can see an overview of the medieval Arabic translations that were made during this period of time. I mean, the time of the so-called translation movement. The information that I give in this overview is based on some historical reports. Some of them are books or sources that were written by historians who were not necessarily familiar with astronomy. So in some cases, they might even mix up Ptolemy's Almagest with some other works, but still, according to what they explicitly wrote, Ptolemy's Almagest was translated from Greek into Arabic at least 7 times. The earliest translation of the Almagest from Greek into Arabic was commissioned by the second Abbasid Caliph, Al-Mansur, by an anonymous translator or translators, which is lost. Then the second translation was commissioned by the minister of the fifth Abbasid Caliph, Harun al-Rashid, by a group of translators, which is also lost. Then third one was a translation made by Abu Hassan and Salm, and apparently Salm was the director of the House of Wisdom, Baytul Hikmah, in Baghdad. And Yahya ibn Khalid ibn Barmak, the minister of Harun, was not satisfied with the previous translation, so he ordered Abu Hassan and Salm to provide more precise, better translation, but this is also lost. Then the fourth one was made by Al-Hasan ibn Quraysh, which was commissioned by Al-Ma'mun, the seventh Abbasid Caliph. And Al-Hasan ibn Quraysh's translation is partially extant in some quotations by Ibn Salah, who was an astronomer living in the 11th century in Iran. But we do not have the entire text. And then another translation, again commissioned by Al-Ma'mun, was made by Al-Hajjaj ibn Yusuf ibn Matar and his colleague, a certain Sarjun ibn Eli al-Rumi, who apparently was very good in Greek, and maybe he was originally Greek. So I will refer to this translation afterwards as Al-Hajjaj's translation of the Almagest, and it is extant in 2 manuscripts. One of them is complete and the other is incomplete. And then the sixth one was made by Ishaq ibn Hunayn, as I mentioned, the son of Hunayn ibn Ishaq, who was one of the leading figures in the so-called translation movement, which was later revised by Thabit ibn Qurra, who was also a mathematician and astronomer and a translator. And I will refer to this translation as the Ishaq Thabit translation of the Almagest. This translation was commissioned by the minister of Al-Mu'tamid, who was also one of the caliphs of the Abbasid dynasty. And fortunately, this translation exists in 10 manuscripts and 1 fragment. And this is actually the subject of my job in this project, to make a critical edition of this translation. And then the last one is a version of the Almagest, which was made by Thabit himself, which is completely different from his revision of Ishaq's translation, and is extant in 2 incomplete manuscripts. Now I would like to give some more details about each one of the extant medieval Arabic translations that I mentioned in this overview. So the first one is the manuscripts of Al-Hajjaj's translation. As I mentioned already, it is existing in 1 complete and 1 incomplete manuscript. So the complete manuscript is preserved in Leiden, as you see the right side of the slide. This is written in Maghrebi script, and apparently it was copied in the 12th or 13th century. And then the second one which is incomplete, is preserved in London. This table gives you an overview of the manuscripts of the Isa Thabit translation. So as you see, totally we have 10 manuscripts, but only 2 of them are complete. Actually the earliest one, which is also one of these 2 complete manuscripts, is preserved in Tunis, Tunisia, with the numbers 7116, and it was copied in the 11th century. And so this manuscript is not only containing the entire text, but also contains all the tables of the Isa Thabit translation, because the other complete manuscript of this translation, which is number 7 in this table and is preserved in Paris and is in Judeo-Arabic characters, meaning Arabic, the language is Arabic, but it is written with Hebrew characters, does contain the entire text, but then the tables of this manuscript are taken from Al-Hajjaj translation. So in principle, the only complete manuscript of the Isa Thabit translation containing the entire text and tables is number 1, the Tunis manuscript. The rest are the manuscripts that are incomplete. So if we want to analyze the texts, the first step, of course, is to reconstruct the text so that we can then compare the texts with each other or go to the details. Here actually is the stemma of the manuscripts that we have from Al-Hajjaj translation and the Isa Thabit translation. And what I would like to show you is, as you see, in some manuscripts, for example, in the manuscript which is identified by C, is preserved in Cambridge, we have a mixture of Al-Hajjaj translation and the Isa Thabit translation. Or in some other cases, we have some contaminations actually from one translation into the other. That's why it is important to have a general image of what is going on in these manuscripts, to be able to reconstruct the text, the pure text of each one of these translations precisely. And the other point is that previously it was supposed that actually the translation or pure translation by Ishaq before getting revised by Thabit is lost, and all the manuscripts that we have of this translation is belonging to the final stage of the Ishaq Thabit translation, which means the revised version. But then I realized actually while making a critical edition of the text and comparing the manuscripts, I noticed that there are some differences or deviations between 2 groups of manuscripts that are labeled as the Isa Thabit translation. And finally, I came to this hypothesis that probably some of these manuscripts are presenting the text of Ishaq's translation before getting revised by Thabit, and some of them, including the Tunis manuscript and Philadelphia manuscript, which are labeled as Group 2, this stemma, present the revised version of the Ishaq translation. I mean, the translation by Ishaq that was later revised by Thabit. So these are the points that should be known actually before we analyze the text. And when I started to analyze the text of the Isa Thabit translation, I noticed that there is a very interesting introductory remark or statement at the beginning of the two complete manuscripts that we have of this Ishaq Thabit translation. So here I present that part of the Tunis manuscript, which contains this introductory remark, and my English translation, which is a literal translation of the text. And I would like to show you that there are some very interesting points in this statement that gives us some hints to a little bit realize what was the concept of translation in that time, as opposed to the concept of, for instance, commentary. So, as you see, it says here are the sentences of what is in the first part of the book by Ptolemy of Qaluth concerning the mathematical sciences. That is the great book known as the Almagest, translated from Greek into Arabic. So it was a direct translation, not via Syriac, but a direct translation from Greek into Arabic for Abu Sabr Ismail ibn Bulbul, who was the minister of the Abbasid Caliph al-Mu'tamid, by Ishaq ibn Hunayn ibn Ishaq, the physician, and revised by Thabit ibn Qurra al-Harrani. Any comment, abridgment, elucidation, clarification, facilitation, assimilation, rectification, annotation, revision, and correction in the interstices, or actually between the lines of this book, and on a subject of it, and embedded in it and in its margins, is by Thabit ibn Qurra al-Harrani. So it means that although Thabit added some revision and some annotations, it was still considered as a translation, not a commentary. And the other thing that interested me was the titles of the Almagest that were also translated from Greek into Arabic. And apparently the main title was the book by Ptolemy of Qaluth. So Qaluth actually is probably the medieval Arabic transliteration of Claudius that was later interpreted as the name of the province where Ptolemy was born, but by mistake. So they thought that Ptolemy came from a region that was called Qaluth, but it was not correct. So Qaluth actually is the medieval Arabic transliteration of Claudius concerning the mathematical sciences. So this was the original title, the book by Ptolemy concerning the mathematical sciences. And then they gave some alternative titles like the Great Book, which is the translation of the Greek adjective Megeste. And then they wrote that the well-known title is Almagesty, which is again based on the Greek word Megeste. So apparently Almagesty was not the original title of the Arabic translation, but then it became very popular. Now I would like to go a little bit to the details of some linguistic characteristics of the text, I mean the translations. So generally, there are some factors that influence the language of the translation. Parts of these factors are concerning the codicological or paleographic and linguistic factors. And there are also some other factors that are of the other type. So I will explain the details in the next slides, and then it will be more clear what I mean. First, I begin with the factors that are concerning the codicological and paleography and linguistic factors, which are influencing the language of translation. I think we can classify them into two general groups. The first one is regarding the factors that are related to the source of translation, like the quality of manuscripts and the peculiarities of the Greek written characters and the character of the text, whether it is a very dry and scientific text or it is a little bit more literal or, for instance, a little bit prosy. Then the second group of the factors are related to the translators or translator. For instance, the mother tongue of the translator, linguistic competence and writing style, and some possible affiliations, for instance, to the circles of translators that I already mentioned at the beginning of my talk. The other factors are regarding the translator's intellectual background, whether, for instance, he was already familiar with the content of text, whether it was astronomical or mathematical text, and then the requirements of the patrons and the target readers of the text. And now I would like to explain a little bit each one of these factors, focusing on the translations of the Almagest. The first item is the quality of the manuscripts. I think it is a little bit very theoretical, because I personally do not know of any source that mentions, for instance, the number of the manuscripts of the Greek text that were available to the translators, or the quality of the manuscripts of the Greek text that was available to the translators. So apparently we do not really have any knowledge about the quality of the Greek manuscripts, but still theoretically it could play a role. And the second item is the peculiarity of the Greek written characters. Sometimes we have some deviations between the numerical values that are presented in the astronomical tables of the medieval Arabic translations of the Almagest compared with the original Greek text. And in some cases, I think maybe the translators made a mistake in reading the numbers because of the peculiarity of the characters in Greek. The other item is the character of the text. As far as I know, according to some meetings that I had with one of my colleagues who is expert in classical Greek, Ptolemy's style in the Almagest has some rhetoric aspects, although the text is a scientific text as a whole. So it is really not a very easy or straightforward text as a scientific book. And interestingly enough, some rhetoric aspects of the text are reflected also in the Arabic translations, because the translators, especially Ishaq, was very actually well versed in writing in Arabic. The other factor is the mother tongue of the translators. In the case of Al-Hajjaj and his collaborator Sarjun, we do not have any information about their mother tongues. but according to some historical sources, we know that the mother tongue of Ishaq was Syriac, but he was also very well versed in Arabic and Greek and Persian as well. And the mother tongue of Thabit was also Syriac, with a high level of knowledge in Arabic and Greek. That's why sometimes, especially the scholars who are experts in Syriac language, can find some traces in these Arabic translations by Ishaq and Thabit, which actually reveal some influences from Syriac, because it was actually their mother tongues. The other factor is the linguistic competence of the translators. According to Ibn Nadim, who was the medieval Islamic bibliographer, Ishaq's Arabic style was superior to the style of his father. As I mentioned, his father was the supervisor of one of these translation circles. And Ishaq even indulged in writing poetry. That's why I mentioned that he could reflect the rhetoric aspects of the Almagest in his translation. And regarding Thabit, maybe you already heard this story that one of the three sons of Musa ibn Shakir Khurasani, who were called Banu Musa, the eldest one of them, Muhammad ibn Musa, once traveled from Baghdad to Harran, which is nowadays in southern Turkey, and Thabit was living there and working as a money exchange, but he was also a very good mathematician and astronomer, and he already was able to speak in several languages. And then, just by accident, Muhammad ibn Musa met Thabit and realized his abilities in languages and in mathematics and astronomy, and he invited him to come to Baghdad to join these translation activities, and Thabit accepted, and then finally became one of the most important figures in these translation activities. So apparently, even before Thabit started his work as a translator of these scientific texts, he already had great knowledge in both languages and also mathematics and astronomy. The other factor is the writing style and possible affiliation of the translators. As I already mentioned, we know that Ishaq was a member of the circle of translators supervised by his father, so he learned a lot from his father about the style of translating and some methods that his father already established in his school. And about Thabit, apparently he was not associated with any of the groups of translators. So apart from the factors that I already mentioned, there are some other factors that could influence the translations. One of them is the intellectual background of the translators. As I already mentioned, unfortunately, our knowledge about Al-Hajjaj is very little, and we know that he already translated Euclid's Elements, so apparently he had some knowledge, at least, about mathematics. And regarding Ishaq, we know that he followed the medical profession of his father, and he was also serving some Abbasid courts as a physician, but as a translator was much concerned with philosophy rather than, for instance, astronomy or mathematics. And about Thabit, as I already mentioned, he was a prominent mathematician and astronomer. And then the other factor was the requirements of the patrons. As you remember, two of the translations of the Almagest were commissioned by the 7th Abbasid Caliph al-Ma'mun, who had some interests in philosophy and astronomy. So it was important for him to know what is actually in these astronomical sources, including, of course, the Almagest as the most important source in astronomy. And the patron who actually commissioned this translation by Isa al-Thabit was Ismail ibn Bulbul, who was the minister of the Caliph al-Mu'tamid. And according to some historical reports, we know that he was supporting some cultural activities, including works on literature and exact sciences. However, his knowledge in mathematics and astronomy is unconfirmed. So I couldn't find any historical report to confirm that he had some astronomical or mathematical knowledge. And the other factor is the target readers of the text. The reader of Ptolemy's Almagest should have at least intermediate knowledge in mathematics and astronomy. So it is a very technical text, and the people who like to read and understand it should have some at least basic knowledge in astronomy and mathematics. In this slide, actually, you can see a page of one of the manuscripts of the Isa al-Thabit translation. And now I would like to a little bit discuss these two translations in comparison with each other. So as far as I could compare these two translations, I mean Al-Hajjaj translation and the Isa al-Thabit translation, they use different terminology, and their way of formulating the sentences are different. And even when you look at the diagrams, the orientation of the diagrams are different. And there are also some occasional differences between the numbers in astronomical tables. But regarding the geometric proofs, they use the same methods and numerical values that are in the original Greek text. And even the letters that are used by them to indicate the points on the geometrical diagrams are basically the same as the letters that are in the original Greek text. So here you can see just one example of the difference between the orientation of diagrams in Al-Hajjaj translation and Isa al-Thabit translation in comparison with the Greek manuscript, which is at the middle. So at the left, you can see a diagram in the only complete manuscript of Al-Hajjaj translation, which is preserved in Leiden. And then on the right side, you see the corresponding diagram in the manuscript of Isa al-Thabit translation, which is in Tunisia. And then at the middle, you see the corresponding diagram in the Greek manuscript. So as you see, the orientation is completely different. Still, all of them are correct. So there is no mistake actually in drawing the diagrams, but they just a little bit rotated the diagrams. And as I mentioned in the overview of the translations of the Almagest, the last one was a version by Thabit ibn Qurra, which was different from his revision of Ishaq's translation. So this translation, this version actually was first identified by Dirk Gruppe when he was writing his PhD dissertation, and first he identified the Latin translation of the text, and then he also found the Arabic manuscript. And recently, my colleagues in the project Paul found a second manuscript of this version, which is again incomplete, but still covers more parts of the text. And as far as I could check the text, I realized that it is a partially literal translation with some additional explanatory sentences and some references to the propositions from Euclid's Elements. And in some cases, he actually paraphrased the original text of the Almagest, and also he rearranged the chapters of the Almagest in a different way. But if you like to have some more details, I refer you to the articles that are written by their group who discussed more details. So this is an overview of the difference between the number of chapters in Thabit's version compared with the Almagest. For instance, in book 1, Thabit's version contains 12 chapters, although in the original text of the Almagest there are 16 chapters. So sometimes there are some differences, as you see in the table. Sometimes they are the same. For instance, in book 4, both versions have 11 chapters. And here are the list of the references by Thabit to Euclid's Elements in the text in his version. One of them is in book 1 regarding chords and arcs, and the other one in chapter 11 of his version of book 1, which regards the preliminaries for spherical proofs. And the next one is in book 3, which is on the hypothesis for uniform circular motion that he refers to the elements. Yes, please.
Let me just tell you that we're kind of about 10 minutes before the end of the session, and so just to let you know, you have your time.
Okay.
As you wish, but
thank you very much. Thank you very much. I think I can a little bit move on quickly. The last part of my presentation is actually regarding the major medieval Arabic works on the Almagest, but I will discuss these works up to the 13th century, because in the 13th century, Nasiruddin Tusi wrote his recension of the Almagest, which took the place of the Almagest. And after him, actually, the scholars preferred to use his recension of the Almagest rather than the original Almagest. So this list would contain commentaries and abridgments that were written on the Almagest. The earliest one is by Al-Kendi, who wrote a commentary in the 9th century based on Al-Hajjaj translation with some quotations from Theon. So it is a very important work for us because it has some quotations from Theon in Arabic. The second one is a commentary by Al-Farabi, which is based on his Thabit translation. But there are two manuscripts of Al-Farabi's commentary, which contains only books 9 to 13, sorry. And the next one is by Abu Ja'far al-Khazin, who wrote a commentary on the Almagest in the 10th century. And there is only one manuscript containing his mathematical proof for Ptolemy's statement in book 1, chapter 3, to argue that the heavens are spherical. And then the next one is a commentary by Ibn al-Haytham, who summarized actually the first 6 books of the Almagest in the form of one book. And then Ibn Sina or Avicenna wrote an abridgment of the Almagest. and parts of his information were taken from Thabit's version. And then Jabir ibn Aflah in Andalusia wrote a re-edition of the Almagest in 9 books, where he criticized Ptolemy regarding astronomical aspects, but without any practical contents and computations. And then the last one, as I mentioned, is a recension by Tusi in the 13th century, which became the most widespread, actually, Arabic commentary on the Almagest. And a lot of super commentaries were written based on Tusi's recension, in which all 3 translations, I mean, Isa Thabit and Hajjaj, and also Thabit's version are mentioned and referred to. And now I would like to draw your attention to 2 questions. The first one is whether the geometric proofs of the Almagest were transformed in its medieval Arabic translations and commentaries. And the second one is that how is the Isa Thabit translation compared with the Al-Hajjaj's one, just as a general point of view. So regarding the first question, I would say that in the translations of the Almagest, the translators did not change the content. So they exactly provided the same text as it was in the original text without changing any mathematical proof. But then in the commentaries, there are some changes, and unlike Al-Farabi, who continued using the quartz, which was a Greek concept, actually. In mathematics, the later commentators replaced actually quartz by sine or jabe as an alternative, because it made it easier to do the computations. And here also at the end of the paragraph, you can see the relationship between sine or jabe and chord for a specific angle like alpha. And in order to address the second question regarding a general comparison between the Ishaq Thabit translation and Al-Hajjaj's one, I would say that both translations are very precise, but the Ishaq Thabit translation is more elegant and smoother, actually, with some rhetoric aspects. As I said, they also reflected the rhetoric aspects of the Almagest itself. And here is a list of bibliography that I used for this talk. And if you like, of course, you always can write to me to give you some more details. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you, Pouyan. This was very clear and fascinating and beautiful. An overview, also very useful for me and probably several of our colleagues who are here. Let me perhaps just say how impressed I am by the way, the systematic and thorough way you approach this huge text. I mean, as you said, it's a very technical work,